So here we go. So a very good morning, everybody. This is Wednesday, the 26th of October, 10 o'clock, the meeting of the local pension board. And I welcome Angie, our new clerk, and everybody else who attended or is attending this meeting. I can see, and I'm just checking, I can see most everybody is here, I hope. I'll check again in a minute. Item number 1 on our agenda are the minutes held from the meeting of the 17th of August. They are on page 3 to 6 on your agenda. Has anybody got any comments on item 1? Hang on, none comments.
None from me, thank you.
Okay, that's fine then. Thank you very much. I'll move to item number 2 on the agenda, which is question time. And no questions have been forwarded. Item number 3 on my agenda is to advise of any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. And there are none. Declarations of interest in the respect of any items on the agenda is item 4. And have we got any? None have been made known to me. Okay, there are none. Okay, now, Matthew, Angie, whoever is in charge, have we got any apologies? Because I can, Manjit is in the lobby, hang on, admit. So, good morning, Manjit, are you there? Hello, Manjit.
Hello. Hello.
Good morning, Manjit.
Good morning. Thank you.
Welcome to the local pension board. We are just going through the start. We are in any minute starting with the first item. Now, have we got, and I'm just, who is missing? Somebody is missing. Oh, Mr. Badger. Have we had any apologies? Matthew?
Yes, we have. So Mr. Bajaj is no longer a member of the board, and we are waiting for the city to confirm who will be replacing him. So we don't have a representative from the city today. Also, Ruth has sent her apologies, who is the staff representative, but everyone else is here.
Right. Thank you very much. When will we know? Will we be advised by the city if we will have a new rep for the next meeting?
Oh yes, we will have one for the next meeting, and we'll continue to chase in the background to make sure we do.
Thank you very much for that, Matt. Okay, so we accept Ruth and the city's apology, and we move over to item number 5. Which is the Pension Fund Administration Report, July to September 22. That's Q2, pages 7 to 18 on your agenda. My camera goes off and Ian will come on. Over to you, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. I hope you can hear me and see me okay. This is the first report. This is the Pension Board Quarterly Admin Report for July to September. This is the usual report I bring through, and this provides a summary of all the information for the quarter. The first point I want to start with are the performance indicators. If I could just ask you to look at Appendix A, if I may please, in the report. And that's on page, I'm just getting there, page 17 of your pack. I just wanted to mention the KPIs in the quarter, because we did have a fairly difficult quarter, I will be honest, in particular with death benefits and also retirement benefit notifications to members within 10 days. For those two KPIs, the death notifications to dependents within 10 working days, we were below the KPI. The KPI target is 90% and we only met 78% in the quarter. And for retirements, the target was 92 and we met 88. Difficult quarter because we were dealing with some really large topics: valuation, annual allowances and annual benefit statements. So 3 huge areas of work were all being condensed into the quarter, really. Since then, though, we've trained 2 more people on deaths, so we're now moving ahead much more positively on deaths. So we should see an improvement in this quarter. 2 more people are trained in this area. And retirement benefits, there's more resource now available because we have completed annual benefit statements and pension taxation statements as well. So there's more resource in that area, so that'll also improve. The KPI targets on customer feedback remain strong throughout the quarter. I was pleased, particularly pleased when I realised, and when you consider the amount of resource being taken up in the other areas. So to maintain the customer feedback in the quarter at the level, I was overall really pleased with that. But I did want to start by saying that so you're aware that we have put things in place to move those KPIs forward for this quarter we're in now. In terms of the workloads, they're back on pages 8 and 9 in your pack. They remain fairly level in pretty much all areas. We have more aggregations than we would ideally aim for, particularly in September. At the end of September, we had just over 1,600 aggregations pending, with a target really of having no more than 1,000. We're also targeting that area, and there's a big training exercise taking place on the early leavers team to train more people on aggregations. So that's an area we're working hard to reduce. And preserve benefits, equally, they're slightly above the 1,000 target. They're at 1,200 at September. Again, another area we're targeting now we've completed a lot of the statutory work. One area I also wanted to mention, and this is an area I haven't mentioned previously, is the help desk. We have a pensions help desk. We introduced it in January 2021, and it's been really good. It works really well, and it helps allow colleagues in some other areas to concentrate on targeting the work without as many interruptions. But it's almost, dare I say, become a victim of its own success. And it was taking up so much time that colleagues, particularly on the early leavers team, who are the colleagues who also deal with aggregations and preserve benefits, weren't actually able to get onto the work. They were spending all their time on the help desk. So we've done modelling, and we've been studying this model now for a good few months. And the majority of calls happen between 9 o'clock and 2 p.m. each day. So we've now reduced the help desk time to that particular period, which then allows colleagues more time to concentrate on actually clearing work after 2 o'clock. I've been closely monitoring this and the feedback, and we haven't had any negative feedback at all. So, so far it seems to be working really well. If a member desperately does need to speak to us after 2 o'clock, they still can. They can still phone us on any of the other phone numbers and speak to a colleague directly, and they can do that if they need to. It hasn't generated any issues or complaints, and we've not seen any change in the customer feedback. So I propose we'll continue to do that. We will continue to monitor it, but at the moment it seems to be working well, and it's allowing colleagues more time to concentrate on tackling some of those big areas of work that have built up over the last few months. In terms of complaints, IDRPs, these are the formal complaints. In the period July to September, there were 2 new IDRPs.
Sorry, Ian, may I just butt in on the help desk? On the help desk, could you please elaborate just a little bit more on what kind of questions they are? Because in many instances, I found that many years ago, when you provided a help desk, people were asking for the sake of asking. So do you actually find there is merit? Are they genuine questions of merit, or are they a question in many cases just because it's there?
Good question. I think all the calls we get are genuine. We don't have people ringing unnecessarily. But what we have found is there is quite a lot of duplication in some of the calls we receive. So what we're working on is we're working on developing our website and member self-service site and directing members more directly and more quickly to the information themselves, so they can effectively do some of the information and find some of the answers themselves. That I wouldn't say is all of the calls, but it is a fair chunk of the calls, and that is helping. The other kind of calls we get are people who are maybe inquiring about retiring or reporting deaths and things of that nature, which clearly we have to answer and we would always want to answer. But the more generic type calls, we can direct them more towards the information on the website.
Great, thank you. And Caroline got her hand up before we move on to your next up.
No, thank you, Mrs. Page. Ian, I was just wondering, and this is something we do within People Services, and I'm not sure whether you've already thought about this or it's already there, but would it be worthwhile considering, if you haven't done so, a frequently asked question page? Because I do find certainly when you work within HR, they really do get used an awful lot, and we, just see what are the frequently asked questions. And I do think from time to time that does help with the call volume coming through and just to direct people to that. So it's just an idea really, Ian, to see whether you thought about it. Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you. And Manjit got a question too before. Over to you, Manjit.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a suggestion, just following up on Caroline's suggestion as well, that maybe, Ian, what you might want to think about doing is, once you've got your frequently asked questions ready or starting to get ready, when somebody calls your number to the help desk, you could actually say that as an initial message to say, actually, can you please refer to frequently asked questions if it's these types of questions you're asking? It'll save you time and effort, blah, 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 and that will then divert people straight away to the frequently asked questions. And I think that's probably something we used to do in IT as well previously, and it helped quite a lot divert a lot of people to self-service as well, and take away the simple questions away from your team, that so you can focus on the more detailed ones where you do need human interaction with the customer.
Yeah, thank you. Can I come back on both of those?
Yes, Page? Yes. Over to you.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Manjit. Yeah, we do have an FAQ area, and it is something that we're developing, Caroline. So I would say it's in the early stages, but it is there. And what we are doing is we're monitoring the types of calls that are coming in, and we are adding to the FAQs and monitoring those. Yes. So that's ongoing work.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. So yeah, that's really helpful. On Manjit's point, it is something we've considered, Manjit, but I don't think, if I'm honest, we've actually done that yet. So we'll continue to monitor this over the coming weeks, and it's certainly something that we could certainly look at doing that. That would be a good idea. So thank you for that comment, and that's something I'll take away. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Right, back to you, Ian.
Thank you. That's helpful from members there. I appreciate that. Thanks. So on the complaints, yes, we had two new IDRPs. In both cases, the independent person considered these and did not uphold the complaints. So they are probably likely to go on towards the Ombudsman, and we'll see how that transpires. We had an earlier stage 2 case that was concluded where the scheme member's previous employer has now changed their decision and has now enabled the member to claim payment of their benefits in full, and that's been paid to the member. So we don't have many. To have 2 formal ones go through in a quarter, probably on towards the Ombudsman, is unusual, but that's the process, and we'll see where they take us. In terms of the statutory work, the point I was making, excuse me, earlier, we did a huge amount of work completed in the quarter. The annual benefit statement work was completed within the statutory deadline. 35,500 members received their annual benefit statements within the deadline. Only 7 members didn't. Those 7 members are the employees of Total Swim. This is the outstanding old admission agreement that's predated April 21. But I'll come back to that because there has been some progress. But in total terms, out of over 35,500, almost all, only 7 members. So that's a positive, but a very good outcome. We also did 152 individual annual allowance letters sent within the statutory deadline of the 6th of October. There were approximately another 100 other cases checked and calculated where the member didn't breach. So that work was also completed within the statutory deadline. The other areas, I won't go into every single area. Some of them I'll pick out the key areas if I may. McLeod and dashboards. At the last board meeting, members asked me to ensure that this was a standard item on the report, and that's a completely good idea. So we've added this in. What we've done in the quarter, in the last quarter, data in respect of police. One of the parish councils and voluntary action has been manually input into the members' records for McLeod, so that has completed those employers. Data in respect of those other employers, some big ones in there, Melton, Blaby, Hinckley and Bosworth, is being worked through. And the queries in respect of data provided by Leicester Police and City Council has been returned for further clarification. Just to give you an indication of the size of McLeod, the exercise that we're undertaking, just the City Council alone, just the City Council, one employer, admittedly the biggest employer, we're working through 67,000 lines of data for the city. So that gives you an indication of the size of this exercise. It's vast. And whilst we have managed to digitize and do a lot of the manual, a lot of the comparisons via computers, there are still a lot of cases that will require manual intervention without any shadow of a doubt. The further we deal with this, the more apparent it becomes that manual exercise is going to be involved a lot here. So Declan has kindly agreed that we have 2 temporary pension assistants. They started actually yesterday, coincidentally, so I'm pleased to say they've actually started. They're initially for 6 months, and their role will be the investigation, but more the manual input of the information into the members' records to help us move forward with McLeod. The 6 months will be reviewed, and we'll see how we stand in 6 months' time. But that's a great start. So we're moving positively on McLeod. Dashboards, I won't dwell on dashboards because Stuart has done a good report, and that's coming up later in the pack. So I'll leave Stuart to go through McLeod if I may. Sorry, through dashboards if I may. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Audit. We had one internal audit report in the quarter on pensions increase. This is the annual increase to members' pensions. There was no recommendations on pensions increase April 22, which is good. However, to improve the good governance for future years, I will sign off the exercise as completed, and I will do a sort of an overall review of the exercise, which I kind of do anyway, but it will make it more signed off from a governance perspective to show that it's been a clearly completed audit. So I accepted that recommendation. In terms of valuation, there's a report coming up next, which I'll happily go through, so I won't dwell on that one at this point. There's been no progress on the code of practice, so we're still waiting on that to come through. That's expected any time. In terms of employer risk, this is the usual item I have on here that shows where we're at, and these are the outstanding legal issues really in the fund, outstanding admissions and bonds. What I would like to just start by saying is from Monday next week, we have a new position in pensions, a pensions liaison officer. It's a new role for pensions. It's something we've been developing, and we recruited only yesterday for this role, and the person starts on Monday. It's an internal promotion within pensions, one of my colleagues who's already working in the section. They have a legal background and they have legal experience. So it's going to be really, really helpful, because it means that we'll have our own internal legal resource within the pension section working to help move some of this forward. So that will be a really big benefit for us. In terms of the most outstanding cases, the 3 most high risk cases, Total Swim, which has been outstanding now since June 21, has been signed by Total Swim. So they have completed it, I understand from our legal colleagues. It's now within LCC legal team awaiting signature of the admission agreement. As soon as it's signed by LCC, it will be completed and will be backdated, and we can then resolve the annual benefit statements for those 7 members. The Ingenus employee, only 1 member. We're liaising that with that member and legal colleagues to resolve this. Only 1 member affected, and we are getting close to resolution on that one. This one's more complicated because it's a joint tender by city and county, so we're having to work with both parties, but we are moving on that. And the other outstanding one, which is Cucina, C-U-C-I-N-A, has been completed. That was completed last week, and that is now done. So we have made some progress on the highest risk ones. The others we're working through and we continue to chase. They are less pressing and they're much more recent. So they were the 3 most outstanding and oldest cases. And 2 of the really big ones that have been outstanding for a while, which are the 2 Turning Point contracts, both with city and county, have both been completed in the quarter as well. In terms of the knowledge and understanding, can I just say to the board, thank you for your comments back on the Hyman's online training. That was really, really helpful. I fed all that information back to Hyman's, and then I had a subsequent meeting with the guy who's in charge at Hyman's, who provides the and indeed actually writes the Hyman's training. All of your feedback was taken on board. It was extremely timely, and Hyman's were very grateful for it. So he wanted to pass on his thanks to the board for your comments. They're working on a revised training online solution, and your comments are being included and considered as part of the revised package. So very grateful for that, and thank you. And hopefully I'll be able to provide a revised pack to you in the not too distant future, although I can't say when that is because I don't know yet. Hyman's are working on that. So that concludes my report. I'm sorry that was quite a long report, but I hope you found that useful, and obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ian. As per usual, very comprehensive and very informative. If members can indicate that they have noted the report as well, please, would be appreciated. And over to Caroline first, and then Richard Shepherd for questions. Caroline.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Page. I just wanted to say, Ian, completely appreciate there are a couple of performance indicators that the team were unable to meet, but I have to say, looking at the complete workload that the team have had to cope with over the past quarter, they have been incredible. And in terms of the other side, in terms of all the statutory work that you have to do and what you've achieved there, again, I just think, you know, it deserves absolute credit. So thank you to you and your team, and also just to pass on our thanks, not only to the team, but also to give our congratulations to the person who has had an internal promotion, because I do think that post will actually pay for itself in one way. In terms of what it's there to do, and I think it will help the section enormously. So a big thank you to the team for all the work in the last quarter.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ditto. Thank you for that, Caroline. I always find it most useful to have somebody like Caroline on a panel like this, because that sort of reflects also very much the staffing side rather, and it gives a full rounding picture of members, staff, and I always think it's very valuable. Thank you for that, Caroline. Richard.
No, thank you.
You're welcome. Richard.
Thank you. I echo Caroline's comments, and the longer I'm on this board, the more I realise how complex the world of pensions is. Thanks to Ian for contacting Hymans. May I assume that in the light of what you say about a new package coming out, it would be appropriate perhaps not to attempt any more of their current modules and wait for the new package to come out, says he, hopefully.
I think that might be a little bit hopeful, Councillor Shepherd. I think there are still some useful areas within the current package, and I think some of the new package will be duplications in terms of the quality in terms of the information, but it will be presented in a different way. But I still think there are going to be elements in there that will be useful. But if I pinpoint those when we need them, I would say is the best solution here. Is that okay?
Yes, that would be helpful. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
I think that is a wonderful idea, Ian, because I have totally given up wasting my time with those. So hands up. Right, Manjit, have you got anything on item 5, or are you blissfully happy?
Item 5, no, I'm fine, thank you. I just to echo the comments made by Councillor Richard and also for Caroline. Thanks to the team and for all their efforts thus far in a very challenging environment. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Ian, for that report. That concludes item 5 on the agenda, and just before we move on to item 6, on the help desk, and when you're doing your question and answering, maybe you could also include a link again to all of these minutes, or maybe even to the recordings, because as I said before, what is reflected on within these individual reports give anybody such a lot of inside information in detail and in simple form that they might find most valuable. Anyway, we are going over to item number 6, which is Pension Fund Evaluation Funding Strategy Statement, which is on page 29, and the whole fund results. And that is over to Stuart.
No, sorry, Councillor Page, that's myself. This one's myself.
Oh, that's you. Oh, yes, it's you again. Stuart is the next one. Sorry. Ian, yes, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Councillor Page. So this is another area of work we've been doing in the quarter. This is the valuation full fund result and the funding strategy statement, and talk about CPI, really. I don't propose to go through the report line by line because, as you know, the valuation takes place every 3 years, and I've been liaising with the board and committee on the valuation over recent meetings. But where we're currently at is what I would like to sort of explain, and then obviously happy to take any questions as we go through. So we took the funding strategy statement to Hymans. Hymans and myself work on the funding strategy statement. Let me start by saying that. So we work together on the funding strategy statement because at the end of the day, it has to be agreed by the fund actuary. So we have to do it in partnership. So we've taken the opportunity to review the sort of the style and the presentation of the funding strategy statement. And we have made some changes. There's nothing major in there in terms of changes, but if I can just kind of cover those. So This is the information on page 20 of the report. So much of the information in the funding strategy statement remains the same as it was before. But what we've done is we've in point 2.3 in the funding strategy statement, we've got a bit about contribution reductions. And this sets out the fund's proposal on how to deal with employer rates, especially those improved funding positions since the 2019 valuation, where employers are in surplus. Now, this is quite an important point because we haven't had employers in surplus very much in recent years because the fund has been in deficit. So generally the employers have been in deficit, but because the funding position is improved significantly since 2019, we now have some employers in surplus. So we're proposing a route in terms of how we deal with that. And that's detailed in the contribution reductions on point 2.3. The other points really are just to make the FSS more explicit. So we're not necessarily making changes, but we're making it clearer in terms of how we deal with it already. So we're just making it more explicit. And that's payment of contributions, early retirement on the grounds of ill health, around the ill health risk, risk and control, having the risk register as a part of the funding strategy statement. Employer covenant assessment and monitoring, again checking employer risk. Climate change is new. The climate risk is a new area that Bulash, our colleague in the investment team, and Kat Tui is working on, and there's been a fund consultation with members on the climate risk. And the other area is the assumptions applied at the employers when they exit the pension fund. This is where they exit non-naturally. So what I mean by that is that, say, for example, an employer may choose to come out of the pension scheme, may choose to leave the pension scheme. In the past, we've done terminations on guilt. We're looking at maybe making that a fairer way of doing that in terms of the assessment of the calculation of the termination value. So that's work ongoing, and that will be submitted back to committee. So that's the funding strategy statement side of it. There's also the assumptions side. Now the assumptions are what are used in the calculation of the valuation results, and these were taken to committee on the 10th of June and were provisionally approved for the calculation of the fund valuation at 2022. And they're detailed in that table on page 21 of your report in section 10. The key area here really is since then, or even at that point, but particularly since then, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, inflation has been rising. And the markets have been unstable. I think it's safe to say that. So we set CPI at 2.7% for the calculation at the time, and we kept that under review. So 2.7%, the modelling has been done by Hymans using the 2.7%. And that's CPI looked at in the long term. So while CPI is much currently higher than that, Hymans look at it as a longer term calculation. But even then, saying that, we still think maybe that one needs to be reviewed and propose a potential change from 2.7 up to possibly 2.9. But it's a fluctuating picture, but potentially change from 2.7. So what I want to try and now explain is how does that link together to then produce the whole fund results. So in 2019, which is when we had the last full valuation, the whole fund valuation result came through with an 89% funding position. So for the fund to be fully funded, it has to be 100% funded. And at the last valuation in 2019, it was 89% funded, which meant we were in deficit. Now, the markets have improved dramatically in the last 3 years, really significant improvements in the markets. And that investment return has really driven improvements in the overall funding position. And using the inflation CPI of 2.7%, we've come out at 109% funded, which means now the fund is in surplus, which is great. You know, that's the first time the fund's been in surplus for a very long time, so that's really good news. But we're slightly concerned that 2.7% inflation might not necessarily be I wouldn't say necessarily inaccurate, but maybe we need to reflect the current situation a little bit more in the CPI. So we could use a different CPI indicator. And if we did change CPI, so say we move the CPI indicator from 2.7 to 2.9%, that would then decrease the overall funding position from 109% to 105%. So this is work still ongoing with Hymans. And what I would just like to show you is if we could just go to pages 97 and 101 of your pack. I just want to show you what that sort of how that's reflected in the Hymans modelling, if I may, because I think these are the two quite useful sort of slides or pages that demonstrate that. So if we could go to page 97 of the pack, we could do that. I don't know whether you can see that, but on page 97 there's a table on the left hand side of that slide, and this is the Hymans slide that shows this is the work they've done in terms of the modelling to come up with the full funding position, and it shows you there using the 2.7% CPI assumption, it produces a surplus of 467 with the full.
Just put in what confuses me there, and there's also a reference to that on point 26 on page 24. It's the 109 and the 108%. I do not understand how you get, you know, to 109 and 108%. So I'm a bit dim here.
No, that's fine. There's different assumptions used in the calculation of the valuation. CPI is just one of them. So by changing some of these factors, it changes how the overall fund calculation is calculated in terms of the result. So the markets have improved dramatically, really significant improvements in the markets. And if we use a 2.7% assumption for CPI, it produces a surplus of 467 million, which means the funding level for the fund is 109% funded, which means we've got more money in the fund than we actually need to pay the liabilities. That's good. That's a good news story. That is good news. But the question is whether that CPI value is prudent with the changes in the CPI inflation in the market in the current situation we're in financially within the country. And if we tweaked that CPI, which is the table here again on this page 97, if we change CPI to 2.9%, the surplus drops then to 299 million, and that would reduce the funding level to 105%. So it'd still be over 100% funded, which is great, but we just need to be careful that CPI, what we decide to use for CPI, is indeed a fair CPI assumption at the end of the day.
Question from Mr. Shepherd, please. But just before that, so the simple answer to my question is the 109%, the 9% are the 467 million, which are the surplus, which are added to, yes. Yeah, okay.
That's the surplus, yeah.
Richard.
Surplus, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I read this with particular interest, this assumptions item, and as I understand it, the tweaking of the CPI is in keeping with the long-term view the Pensions Committee and officers can take. Clearly, it's far higher than that now.
Yes.
Pundits are saying it should come down. I know I've heard various figures quoted, 2-3 years time, but yes, I can appreciate that tweaking is appropriate, given the fact that you can take a long-term view and not just react to the current, whatever it is, 10%, something rather CPI increase now. Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct. And if I just can take you on to the next slide, and this is the one I think it kind of demonstrates how this kind of works in terms of how it would affect the employers, because I think this is important. So if we could I just take you to page 101 of the pack? And this is the slide that says individual employer funding levels, and there's like a scatter graph on the right hand side of the slide. I hope you can all see that. So the red line on that slide, that's the 109%. So that's based on the 2.7% CPI. And these dots, all these dots represent employers. And what this shows you is how many of the employers above the line, above that red line, will be overfunded, i.e. over 109% funded. And you can see that some of them, there's one right at the top that's over 190% funded. In fact, there's 5 over 190% funded. Admittedly, they aren't necessarily the largest employers, because the assets share, which is the scale on the bottom of that graph, shows you the size of the employers. So that the biggest employers are the two that are almost on the red dot. As you can see, they're the ones to the furthest hand and right hand side on that. The smallest employers in terms of asset share are those on the left hand side. But what you can see is there's quite a big cluster of reasonably big employers that are sort of 150 to 170% funded, and they're the ones that could challenge this, really, because they could say, well, we're so well funded now, we want some of this money back. And this is the debate, and this is the dilemma we're having. This is the sort of a challenge we're going to be having, because whilst the overall funding position is good, that's at a point in time. We've got to look at this in the longer term. So where employers might say, well, actually, now why am I paying such a rate? I want to have a big refund, or I want to have my money back, or I want to stop paying. We've got to look at this in the long term. So we've got to take a prudent approach here. And that goes back to the funding strategy statement, where we've got within the funding strategy statement, which will be consulted with with the employers, a view of what we can do for those employers that are, let's say, over 120% funded. And there may be a kind of a gradual way we can give some of that back in terms of maybe a reduction to their rates, but we can't just suddenly turn and say, right, okay, you can have all this money back, because if then the situation worsens, we're then back into a deficit position, and then we're trying to play catch up with these employers. So we've got to be fair and reasonable, but we can't be seen to be unduly we can't be overly I don't know what we can't give the money back too easily, as well, was what I'm trying to say. I can't think of the exact word, but we've got to try and balance the overall position with the employers and be reasonable with them, but the overall longer term effect, and that's really the key here.
While you're taking a breath, Manjit wants to ask a question. Over to you, Manjit.
Thank you, Chair. Ian, it may be a silly question. I missed the last meeting, but maybe I missed something. But in terms of giving money back or reducing rates, etc., going forward, in the current environment, I mean, what's your view that in the current environment, is that something we'd want to do, because things change all the time, as you say, and over even maybe the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be a changing environment that could then impact us. And then, as you say, we'd have to go back to the employers and say, well, now this has happened. You need to then, so is it prudent to sort of make it a more sort of not short term, but medium term view that we want to avoid that if we can, where at all possible?
That's it, Manjit. You've kind of hit the nail on the head, to be honest with you, because it's that fair and balanced level of what is reasonable against what is the long term, and that's what we're trying to bring in via the funding strategy statement. Maybe we could just go to that. Could I just take you to, if I may, could I just take you to page 34 of your pack, if that's okay? This is the funding strategy statement, and on page 34, the section in yellow, this is the new bit that will be consulted on with the employer. This section in yellow on page 34 in yellow on it's section 2.3.
May I please interrupt you, because I'm sure members will find it very difficult to go to the slides and whatever. I have got a paper copy for that reason. Do you think it is possible for you to share it now and put it on the screen?
Okay.
Because
I'll
then
share
it would be a lot. And then next time we'll do that you share it anyway, because it's a real pain. Ah, look, there you go, members.
Can you see that?
Thank you.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is the page that I'm referring to. So what we're proposing here is where employers are, well, let's do it line by line. So an employer that's less than 100% funded, and looking back at that previous graph, there were still employers that were below that red line. So employers that are less than 100% funded, the employer pays a contribution rate to increase their funding level, just as they would do in previous valuations when they were in deficit. Employers between 100 and 110% funded, the employer pays a contribution rate to continue to build their funding level to a level between 110 and 120, which is where we're trying to get to, because that's where we feel confident that the rates will be good to take Manjit's point, where it then gives us that level of security for the long term. Between 110 and 120, the employer pays a contribution rate to maintain their funding level between 110 and 120. And then this is the key point here. The greater than 120% funded employers, which there will be because there were some above that line that we looked at on the graph, employer is allowed to benefit from a contribution rate reduction to gradually, that's the key word, reduce their funding level down to 120% where applicable. So what can I unshare my screen and come back so I can see you all? Is that all right?
Ian, sorry, I guess you've done the calculation.
Yes.
Sorry, Ian, I guess you've done the calculations for what that means in terms of the money that would be given back, I guess, above that last figure, last percentage figure you mentioned there.
We're working on that with Hymans at the moment, Manjit.
Okay.
That's the work that's ongoing at the moment.
Yes.
That's the work that's ongoing now. What I expect to have is the indicative rates by employer, because at the moment all I've got, Manjit, is November.
Hello, Ian.
You're frozen. Ian is frozen.
Ian's frozen, I'm afraid, yeah.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Hello, Ian, can you hear us? I think what we'll do is we'll just hang on for 1 second and see if Ian or the officers can retrieve them. Just a sec, everybody. Apologies.
That's okay.
I think we might be having a technical hitch here.
It
Ian
looks like
is
he's back in, yeah.
And everybody is back in online.
I do apologise. I don't know what happened there. I seem to have dropped off the meeting. I'm sorry, everybody. I don't know whether, I don't know quite where I dropped off there, but I think it was the point where I was saying to Manjit. So by November, Manjit, I'll have all of the individual employer results. So at that point, I will then be able to properly model what does that actually mean in terms of values to each employer, and how would that filter through? And then what I propose then is that we will then consult with the employers in November, and then they'll have the opportunity to answer any questions or come back with queries on the funding strategy statement, the investment strategy statement as well, and of course their own individual rates, and then we can work through it at that point. So that will take place throughout December and probably January in truth, and then we'll be able to then finalise that, get all the final parts to the committees and board in, say, late February, March time, in order for this to be signed off by the actuary in March, ready for implementation in April. So for me, December, particularly late November, December into early January, is going to be pretty much dealing with this, I would say, pretty much full time, to be honest with you. Sorry, that was a long answer, but does that help? Does that help?
No, that helps. It puts into context the page 23, I think you mentioned, the highlighted bits, what that means as well. That's really helpful. And of course, as you say, there's a balancing act here in terms of authorities are in the situation they're in, but the environment is such, and we need to plan for the future to make sure there's the best returns there. And yeah, exactly right. Yeah, no, thanks, Ian. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Well, Ian, that was very comprehensive again, and thank you very much for that. Are there any more questions from any other members? So this report's been noted, and we are now, I don't think, Ian, you want to add anything, do you?
No, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Very comprehensive. And now it's Stuart. And it is report number 7 on your agenda, pension fund strategies and policies, on page 111 until 124. Welcome, Stuart. Nice to see you. And over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Right, morning all. This report is an update on the fund's policy documents, and any new or amended policies will be brought to the board and then presented to the pension committee for approval at a subsequent meeting as the body responsible for the governance of the fund. The policies are all listed on pages 112 and 113. Just want to highlight the new strategies and policies that are within this. The first new strategy to highlight is the net zero climate strategy, which, following an agreement at the pension committee meeting last November, this has been developed. At the committee meeting on the 10th of June this year, it was agreed that an engagement exercise covering proposed metrics and targets, which were in line with the net zero investment framework, which were developed by the Institutional Investors Group on Climate Change. The exercise ran from the 5th of July to the 18th of September, and the fund received over 1,000 responses from pension scheme members, employers, investment managers, and others, which are being utilised to shape the strategy. The outcome of the exercise, along with the draft strategy document, will be presented to the committee next month on the 18th of November, following which there will be a further consultation with the final version of the strategy due to be presented to the committee for approval in March next year. The pension fund budget and business plan for the year ahead, that's been approved by the committee back in March. The FSS, the financial strategy statement, obviously Ian's covered this already, so I don't intend to add anything else to that, but it's included in this report purely for completeness. A new policy outlining the fund's approach to cyber risk has been drafted following work with the council's technical officer, to ensure that the policy can demonstrate that the fund has robust governance arrangements in place and to provide assurance that risks are well managed. This policy has been developed to ensure compliance with the pension regulator's requirements for pension schemes to take steps to build cyber resilience, i.e. the ability to assess and minimise the risk of a cyber incident occurring, but also to be able to recover when an incident takes place. Broadly speaking, the policy is divided into two sections, one covering systems and the other covering staff. The systems section mainly covers the Hayward's Altair database and related systems, including the likes of iConnect and the member self-service website. Officers will ensure that system suppliers manage their cyber risks well by asking them to provide evidence that their cyber accreditations are kept up to date, and exercises such as the annual disaster recovery and penetration testings have been carried out. So arrangements have been made to meet with Hayward's on an annual basis to go through this, for them to provide documentary evidence and discuss any related issues. As Altair holds the section's live data, we are mindful of the possibility of malware attacks, and Hayward have provided details of their approach to ensure that the robust processes are in place, and these are covered within the document. There are other systems that officers use to send data or create reports, and again, the approach is to contact these suppliers annually to ensure that all checks are in place. The staff section relates to ensuring officers cover more fundamental cyber topics, including information security training, sending emails securely, using strong passwords, and processes around any data breaches. And where appropriate, the fund adopt existing LCC policies that are already in place. So it's expected that the policy will evolve, and an initial review is scheduled after 12 months. So that was all I wanted to really say on that report. So if anyone has any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you, Stuart. Much appreciated and very comprehensive again. Let's work backwards. Do any of the members have any comments on the policy, which starts at page 117? Stuart, I think you're getting away lightly. I can see no hand. Oh, yes, Richard.
Sorry, big pardon. Sorry, none. Nothing from me.
Oh,
sorry.
None. Okay. Okay, I'll ask the next question then. Are there any questions on the body of the report, page 111 to 116, which includes the list of policies? And again, no hands up, Stuart. You got away very lightly. So I assume that all members of the board are happy with this and there are no further comments. Yep. Okay.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Caroline, anything? Manjit,
No.
anything?
Agreed.
No, agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stuart. So without further to-do then, we'll move on to the Pensions Dashboard Programme, which is page 125 to 130 on your agenda, and that is Stuart again. Over to you, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to provide the board with details of the National Pension Dashboards Programme and a position update with regards to to our fund. The dashboard programme is intended to provide a single secure port of call for users to access details of their pension history in one place, which will eventually include their state pension. Initially, it is intended to be relatively simple, so it will offer users the opportunity to find their active or deferred pensions and then view details of those pensions. It is intended, though, that the system will develop over time, and ultimately the dashboard programme will help users to make informed choices around their pensions. The dashboard programme is made up of a framework of systems to form an ecosystem. I don't intend to go through exactly how it works, and each component, but details are provided within the report, as well as a short link to a video demonstrating this. There are a couple of things I wanted to note though about how it works. It's intended that there will be multiple dashboards available to users from commercial suppliers, but also one developed by the government's Money and Pensions Service. The data won't be held centrally. When a request for data is received from a user, a finder service sends out an instruction to all integrated service providers, which provide a link from pension scheme systems to the dashboard to search for the user's pension. So it's intended to act like a giant switchboard. If data is found, the service providers then send the data directly to the dashboards for the user to access. And this approach is intended to provide assurance to the schemes that GDPR and related legislation is adhered to. As you would expect, best practice security standards, as recommended by the National Cyber Security System, will be applied. Currently, the project is in the develop and test phase. The developers are continuing to work with the dashboard suppliers on testing and integrating the various parts of the ecosystem. Now, pension schemes will be onboarded to the programme in 3 waves. Large schemes will be between April 2023 and September 2024. Medium schemes between October 24 and October 25. And then following that in 2026, small schemes will be onboarded. So we will be in the large scheme category and will need to be onboarded by the 30th of September 2024, which will initially just allow for users to establish solely if they have a pension benefit within the fund. And then from the 1st of April 2025, the fund will be expected to supply details of those pension benefits, so to be a two-phase approach for us. I've included a timeline of the related legislation to date for information. Note that the actual regulations are currently expected to come into effect by the end of this year. So in terms of the actions that we need to take, we will need to arrange to sign up with an integrated service provider to enable our data to be accessible through the dashboard ecosystem. The providers do include Hayward's, our system supplier, and officers have already had initial discussions with Hayward about this, which will simplify the onboarding process. As part of the prep for onboarding, it's going to be important to ensure that data held on our system is as accurate as possible, to ensure that when users are searching for their pensions, they will be able to find them. Where there is some doubt over identifying a member, either a partial match or a mismatch is returned. And a partial match would result in a request for the user to supply further information to those funds. And then any requests coming through to us, we would need to perform a check to establish whether there is membership held. And so we will need to establish a process to deal with these cases. Funds will also be expected to hold data on new scheme members within 3 months of joining the fund. As our fund already receives data on a monthly basis through iConnect, generally our records are up to date. It is currently the case, though, that some employers do not provide the data as promptly as we would like, and we will be contacting all employers to emphasise the importance of sending the data through in a timely fashion to ensure that the fund complies with the expected legislation. It's expected that the launch of the dashboard programme will result in a higher profile for pensions in general, which could result in an increase in the number of queries that we will receive, particularly around estimates, transfers and refunds. The programme will no doubt continue to be a topic on all upcoming national pension meetings, and any future updates, any updates on future developments will be provided at a future board meeting in 2023. Finally, just to note that I haven't provided an improvements report for this meeting due to the work around dashboards and cyber, but this will return at a future meeting. And again, if anyone's got any questions, happy to try and answer those.
Well, Stuart, very comprehensive, but I echo the words of Councillor Shepherd. The more time I spent on this board, the more confused I get.
You're on mute,
You're
Mrs.
muted.
Page.
Chancellor.
Hang on, I'm muted. The question was going to ask you actually covered, because I assume as this is adding to complicate matters, there will be a tremendous increase and pressure on the helpline, because people are now confused and want to ask more and more questions. But you know, so do you think the question is, yes, it's legislative, but do you think it actually adds a value to the process other than a confusion? Before I go over to Manjit, who's got his hands up.
I think anything that raises awareness of pensions has got to be a good thing. If it means that people start thinking more about their own pension position earlier, then yeah, I'm sure that will add value in general. Yes, it might be initially that there's going to be more work. I'm sure we'll be able to deal with that and factor that in, and then long term adjust resource accordingly. Yeah, I mean, I suppose we'll have to wait and see beyond the initial clamour, no doubt, for information, whether things will settle down. Or it will just become the norm going forward.
Do you think it will be, well, you just said you've got to wait till it settles down, but I could imagine it going to be an additional resource issue that might be of, you know, that has to be absorbed within, you know, the system. So anyway. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe so. I mean, one of the things that we'll be looking at is an increase in terms of what can be done on the website. So there's already a benefits modeler on there. So it's intended that once they have their information in terms of the pension, there'll also be a link to our website through the dashboard that people can then go in and delve a bit further into their own details and do their own calculations. So if there are areas that come out of this that we aren't currently catered for on the website, then that will be an aim to ensure that long term that these things can be done through the website wherever possible.
Thank you, Stuart. Manjit.
Thank you, Chair. Stuart, just a couple of questions from myself. You mentioned that this new portal or this new website will be able to give us access to all our pensions because there's a feed through from various areas, and that includes state pension as well.
In the long term, it will.
Long term. All right. Okay. The long term, and I'm just trying to think, and to the chair's point about complexity as well, because if, for example, there are people, and I don't know what the numbers are going to be, who have 3 or 4 pensions, to have them all in one area would be quite helpful to see all of them. Would they still need to have access, do you think, to their original pension sites at all going forward?
Yes, I mean, certainly we intend to put a link to our website within our area as well, so they'll see those initial details, and then it's envisaged it will say something like click here for more information on your details, and so we'll expect to come out of that more people will register for their own member self-service account on our portal. So this is where it's all going to be about increased awareness, and from that, no doubt, more queries will follow.
Okay. And just one other question, in terms of the way that it's going to be set up, in terms of what you have access to, has that all been agreed and signed off, I guess, in terms of the templates or the views or the the pages that you'll see once you log in?
It's something that's being worked on at the moment. So we're in the develop and test phase right now. So as far as I'm aware, that 1 or 2 different layouts are being considered. So that's still to be completed.
So customer feedback is still being provided for that development at the moment.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Caroline, Richard, any more questions?
Not
No?
from me, Mrs. Page,
not
thank
from me,
you.
no, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Stuart, thank you for providing the update, and very much appreciated as always. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, look, Manjit is very good at the little emojis. I keep getting little claps and thumbs up.
I'll show you at the end when you do the training if you want me to. I'll show you how to do it.
Oh, please, I need that. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are now back to the agenda, and we are on item number 9, and that is the risk management and internal controls on pages 131 to 152 on your agenda, and it is our own Ian who will inform us of all of those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the funds risk register. The report comes to both board and committee at each meeting, and it just provides an update. We use the risk register on a monthly basis, if not more regularly. We have a lot of areas, as you've already seen, from the complexity of pensions. So we keep the risk register up to date, and we work closely with audit. Audit always review this before it's taken to any board or committee. So you've got assurance that this is being reviewed by a third party as well. We break the risks into 6 sections. And all I'm going to propose is really just to say that any changes are then included in the report. So we've only made some minor changes to the last risk register, and they're detailed on page 132 of your report. As Stuart's already said, the fund is developing a net climate strategy to work through that. So that's included in risk 3, which is the investments. On risk 8, which is governance on the in-house AVCs, several funds met with our AVC provider, and you may recall, excuse me, members of the board met with the Prudential themselves in not that long ago. This meeting was positive. It's designed to build on future improvements and tried to negate and drop and avoid future drops in service standards. The meeting was positive, but there are still ongoing issues. The Prudential openly admit they haven't resolved them all, and indeed only last week they announced they'd found some more problems that they've now got to work through. So the issues continue, I'm afraid, with the Prudential, so it's still on the risk register. Risk 12, the new fund cyber risk policy, as Stuart's already gone through, so that's already out there, and you're aware of that. And risk 13, immediate payments. A new system is being developed in Altair, and that will enable officers to check members' individual bank account details before making payments. So it will act as a security check. This is a new development. It was actually proposed by Leicestershire. It was my colleague Stuart and another colleague, Ian Potter, who proposed this and actually put it back to Hyman, to Haywards, and Haywards have developed this, and it's now within their wider package, wider system available for all funds, and it's being tested at the moment. We're a member of the Haywards testing party, and that's the area that we're testing at the moment. So we're hoping that will be in the next release, and that will be a good future development. That was all I was proposing to say, but happy to take any questions.
Right, thank you very much for that, and well done, Stuart, because that is a very good idea. Anything from our members on the risks on the... Oh, Caroline, over to you.
Yeah, I was just going to raise the issue of potential again, Ian. And is there anything that the board can do to help support taking any of the issues forward as we did last time? Probably
question.
not. It probably not. It might be too early in, but just to make the point, we are here to help support if you need us, if you want to bring anything to the next meeting, for example, as you know, the risks become probably more known and apparent, then we're obviously here happy to help.
Thank you, Caroline. That's very kind of you. I have to be a bit careful because I'm obviously very aware this is an open meeting.
Yes.
And I've got to be a little cautious in what I say, but we are having ongoing issues, and I'm not just talking about our fund. This is across all funds, and it's not just local government either. I'll be honest, it's wider than that.
Okay.
In terms of whether the board could help, I think if I can just keep feeding back to you all in terms of the position, and then I think propose to make a report to the board probably early in 2023 with some thoughts I might have about how we could consider our AVC package moving forward. I think I'll just leave it at that, Caroline, if I may, and then that would open up the conversation, if that's okay. Would that be all right?
Absolutely. Thank you. I just wanted to offer our help. Thank you.
That's greatly appreciated. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Right, that is that. Are there any questions on the actual matrix attached to this report? Again, there are none. Well, Ian, that concludes item number 9. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stuart. Thank you very much, Matthew and Angie. And we are now on item number 10, dates of future meetings. February 8th, 23, 26th of April, 2nd of August, 18th of October. Invites will be sent. I'm sure it will all be on Teams again because it's working quite well. And I think it seems to suit members. All of these meetings are at 10 o'clock. Item 11 is on the agenda is any other items which are urgent. There are none, other than to mention for members to stay online because Ian will provide the usual training after this meeting has been concluded. With all of this, I will thank you again for attending this meeting, officers and members, and we will close this meeting at 11:18. Please stay online. Thank you.
Thank you.